Hello, hello, and welcome to the Analytive podcast. Today we have a very, very special guest named Daniel Fischer. Daniel does LinkedIn outreach and customer support at a company called Wooly. That's Wooly. Wooly reveals who your customers really are so you can build lasting relationships with your most important influencers. Daniel originally grew up actually on an orchard in Mount Hood, Oregon. He's an amazing cross-country skier. When applying to Harvard, he was advised to strengthen his resume by getting an internship in business. So through LinkedIn, he ended up reaching out to Scott Paul at Wooly, and now he helps drive sales through LinkedIn outreach. And today, that's what we're going to talk to him about. I love this podcast because we really get into the tactics and tools and tips and techniques that we can use to do LinkedIn outreach. If you're anything like me, you get tons of LinkedIn spam. So we talk in this podcast about how to cut through the noise, how to develop real meaningful relationships, and then sell the product through LinkedIn. It was a pretty wide-ranging discussion, but we really dug deep into how to use LinkedIn for outreach. So without further ado, I want to welcome Daniel Fischer to the podcast. Okay, Daniel, thanks for coming on the Analytive podcast today. It's really, really, really good to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Tyler. Thanks a lot.
Sure. And so for people who don't know who you are, I'll give a little bit of background. You have been working at a company called Wooly, and we can talk a little bit about what that company is later. But you are sort of a LinkedIn ninja when it comes to sales and outreach, but wanted to hear a little bit about your background and how you sort of got involved with Wooly and where you are right now.
Yeah, so originally why I got involved with Wooly is I was pursuing the opportunity to ski at Harvard, and the ski coach recommended that rather than what my traditional summer jobs had been, he recommended that I pursue an internship in business, just to kind of show that after 2 post-grad years, I was still intellectually engaged and ready for the next step. So I tried kind of a couple of the traditional job posting sites and did some cold outreach, but kind of really figured out how to reach out on LinkedIn and sent a message to Scott Paul, who's the CEO at Wooly, and asked if he knew of any internships and opportunities in the Salt Lake City area. And then so that kind of had a meeting and a phone call with him, and then he offered me a job at Wooly, and then that's kind of how all that came to fruition.
Very cool. And for people unfamiliar with Wooly, can you give the elevator pitch or a couple minute intro to what Wooly is as a company and what services or products they offer?
Yeah, sure. So Wooly is an advocacy marketing platform that helps brands discover, delight, and mobilize their most valuable customers and advocates. So probably one of the best ways we do this is through a company's CRM. So we can connect to the company's CRM and see, oh, hey, this big influencer just purchased, $5K and whatever product that you market. And so then rather than just sending them that product and not having any interaction with the customer, you can personally reach out to that customer and develop more of a one-on-one relationship with that customer, maybe offer them a free product, write them a handwritten note, and really have a more human-to-human interaction with that customer.
Gotcha. And that's primarily, then you said, on influencers. So effectively, you guys have a list of influencers that you are constantly checking the company's CRM against. And if one of them sort of pops up, it's flagged and then sent over to a sales team?
Well, so we don't have a list of influencers. We don't have an in-app network per se, like some companies do. So our software can, when somebody buys with their email, our software can search that email through social media and find whether that person is an influencer.
Gotcha.
And then personal company, individual companies can set limits of when they want to be notified. I want to be notified if this person has over 1,000 followers or whatever. And then, they are notified that this person just purchased from them, and then they can take action on that.
Very cool. Very cool. And you've grown the business a lot through LinkedIn, but not using LinkedIn advertising, actually using LinkedIn outreach. And the reason actually I wanted to have a conversation with you today was actually Scott Paul, the CEO and founder of Wooly. gave kind of a post on LinkedIn where he was promoting you and saying that, they've gone from about zero to, I think, $1 million in annual revenues, I think was the numbers that he gave, just from sort of this cold outreach, and said you have been a big part of that. So talk to me a little bit about LinkedIn and sales strategy on LinkedIn. How do you approach that from a really high level?
Well, I mean, first I want to point out, it's a team effort. And once I get a contact with Scott, I'm typically, I generate the lead and kind of get that lead going, and then I'll pass it off to our sales guys who will get the meetings and, finish that lead off. But really, I think LinkedIn kind of has changed sales strategy today because there's no need for cold calling anymore. You can use LinkedIn search parameters to search who would be best served to reach out to at a certain company. And then you can even see, whether you have any existing contacts at that company. And then if not, you can use the search parameters to search for VP of sales, CMO, whoever's the best fit for you to reach out to. And then LinkedIn provides so much visibility as far as work history, and just like a bio, and kind of shows you any articles that they've been involved with, or, kind of what they have on their bio. So it gives you a lot of information when you reach out to somebody to personalize your message.
Sure. So then let's kind of work through the process from the very beginning, when you have either no contact or you're making the list, to, all the way through the handoff. So the first step then is making a list or figuring out who you want to reach out to or who you want to connect with. How do you go about doing that?
So a couple different ways. Typically, we might be prospecting for an event that one of our sales guys is going to attend, or Scott is going to attend, or it might just be, one of the guys comes to me and says, "Hey, we'd really love to get company X, Y, and Z." And so how I'll go about that is I'll search on, I have a couple different networks that I use, like news sources. So I'll go on to Marketing Week, or Digiday is another one, digiday.com. And I'll search for the specific company we're looking for, just to see if there's any relevant media news about them, especially if it's influencer marketing, even better. And that's super helpful because a lot of times these news sources will have interviewed somebody within the company. And so then I can find that name and search for them on LinkedIn, and directly reference the LinkedIn or the news source I found, and kind of personalize my outreach. But it's a lot of once I know a company we're looking for, I'll use LinkedIn search parameters to kind of find who I think would be the best fits to reach out to at that company.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's just, if we made up a company, right? I think I've seen on your website, you guys work with Disney, but say that you wanted to reach out to somebody at Disney. So you go through and you, obviously a company like a Disney, they have, really high executives, and they have, 100 different vice presidents, right? So how do you go through and determine who out of that list of executives you want to actually connect with?
So typically you want to make sure that this person's active on LinkedIn, because if they're not active on LinkedIn, there's no point in reaching out. So a little LI will pop up if they use LinkedIn premium services, which is, a monthly subscription to LinkedIn. So typically if they have that service, they're active on LinkedIn. And then you can also see sometimes there's a little green open next to their name on LinkedIn. And that also shows that they're active on LinkedIn and open to receiving messages. So, typically I'll choose at a certain company, like anywhere from 5 to 10 different people that I want to reach out to. And I'll do a lot of, for each contact, I'll spend 10 to 15 minutes looking through their profile and really researching to see whether this person's a great fit and whether I can personalize my outreach to them. I hope that, kind of answers that question.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And then since you guys are in the influencer space, what are some triggers or some things that you look for? Obviously, they have to be active on LinkedIn. You talked about that.
Right.
What are other flags that are useful to you when you're going through this? Because some people, is it past experience? Is it skills? What are the things that you're kind of looking for?
For me, I'm looking for somebody that's actively involved in their social media. So it could be, or in their marketing. So like it could be their CMO or VP of marketing, or their like manager of media or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
then, a lot of times it's great if you can go onto their LinkedIn bio and um, and kind of just read through that and see what kind of past experiences they have. And if they've been involved in the media world for a lot, that's super helpful, because they're interested in what we're trying to pitch them.
Gotcha. Very cool.
But I think the biggest thing is I personally never want to start so how I reach out to these people is I'll send them a contact request on LinkedIn, and I'll include in the contact request message, I'll include a little personal note to that person. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the biggest thing is you never want to have that note be a sales pitch, because let's be honest, a lot of people get dozens of sales pitches a day on LinkedIn. So if it's very refreshing if you receive a personal note, if for the person receiving that note, it makes you feel pretty special to be like that the person actually spent the time to do some research on you and find out what you're interested in.
Yeah, for sure. And is in that initial contact, that first personal note, is that where you're
Mhm.
including maybe the recent highlight in the news article, or is it just what is a typical opening look like? I guess I'm just asking, be as specific as possible, because this is really
Right.
helpful.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So it would be a reference to that news article. So for example, recently, one of the messages that I sent out was, hey, loved the recent article that I read on Digiday. How are you personally managing how are you personally managing the direct relationship with those LinkedIn connections? Or not LinkedIn connections. How are you directly managing that personal relationship with your influencers? And this was just an article that I'd read on a company where they were switching from using typical agencies to manage their influencers to doing more of an in-house management of influencers, so they have a direct relationship with that influencer.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's more of a question, and like asking for advice on how they manage, rather than trying to pitch Wooly to them. But
Right.
that has led that that outreach has led to a sales meeting now. So
Very cool.
yeah.
So you reach out with a personal note and
Hmm.
highlight something that you've seen in the news or something they've shared personally on their social media account. Um,
Right.
and then and a lot of times you said you're asking for advice. It's kind of like, I don't know, I think it's Warren Buffett, but I don't want to misquote it. If you ask for or money, you get advice. If you ask for advice, you get money. So sort of like playing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I love that quote, actually. And it's funny. The first time I ever heard that quote was in a Pitbull song back in 2013, and he
Okay.
says, "Ask for money, get advice. Ask for advice, get money twice." And so that's a quote I actually live by. So I love that you brought that up. And that's exactly right. So and how I personalize those messages. One that not a lot of people know about is it's called moat.com, MOAT.com. And that is a website that shows you all the relevant ads that a company is currently running online. So you can see what that company is really trying to, what that company's trying to market right now and pitch. And then you can more easily kind of, target like how your outreach. So for example, Mercedes, if you typed in Mercedes Benz on moat.com, you can see, they're trying to promote the Mercedes G-Wagon or whatever right now. I'm going to ask on LinkedIn what strategies they're currently taking to promote that car or whatever.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I know I've not used moat.com. I've used, since the election, Facebook has made a lot of
Mm-hmm.
their ads available. So I use that a lot. And then I just saw, I've not used it yet, but LinkedIn ads, actually companies or LinkedIn just added an ads tab, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
recording this in, May of 2019, but just added an ads tab where you can go in and see what ads people are running. I'll have to check out moat.com because that's one that's new to me, because I've used, like I said, LinkedIn, Facebook, and then, think it's SEMrush or SimilarWeb. SimilarWeb is what I've used before, which shows
I've
display.
heard of that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And moat.com is pretty similar to SimilarRush. That was
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
but yeah, those are two very similar websites.
Nice. So when you're going out there and you're reaching out to people, are you doing this as Daniel? Are you doing this as Scott? Are you using his profile? Do you change it up? Like, what's your strategy as far as that goes?
So I reach out to people solely through Scott. So I'm, his professional catfisher in that regards. I'm very lucky because Scott, has a very strong presence on LinkedIn and lots of connection and really strong bio too. Lots of angel investments and past work as a VP at Disney. Different companies that he's sold. So it's I don't want to say it's easy, but it's much easier reaching out as him than would it be as me or somebody else, just because of the reputation that he has on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And then obviously for someone like Scott, he has a very good resume anyway. But then he's also done a lot to beef up his LinkedIn profile and make it active and professional, so really highlight any, I guess, tips as you're out there looking at LinkedIn all the time, right? What makes a good LinkedIn profile in your mind?
Well, I'd say one of the biggest things is a lot of people, they'll post their past work history, but they don't really they'll just have the position and then how many years they've worked there. And it's super helpful when they elaborate on what they personally did in that position and at that company. And you see this with the best profiles, rather than just saying they're the VP of marketing, they say, I ran a team of 5 people, and we brought the company sales from blah 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 to blah blah blah, and like kind of more elaboration on what they do. And then another one that Scott's really focusing on right now is producing content weekly, because I don't exactly understand how all this works, but the LinkedIn algorithms will promote your profile more if you're constantly promoting or constantly producing content and publishing content. And we've gotten a lot of leads through that content of people, kind of reading what he has to post and then asking questions about Wooly.
Very cool. And then, so super helpful. And then it reminds me, so when we were talking about profiles, so at one point in my life, and I still do this from time to time, I help people a lot with their resumes. And it was the same kind of thing of, I had this job, but I'm like, well, what did you do there? What were the skills that you learned? What was, and be specific, especially with numbers. People, like, when we're working on a resume or a LinkedIn profile, adding numbers, a 10% improvement, double the revenue, whatever those things are, very, very specific. So it sounds like it's really, as your digital resume, in a sense, really focusing on the same tips and techniques you would use to really build out a great resume.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. LinkedIn is kind of it is kind of a resume today, of your past work history. And it's helpful for me too, because that's all information that I can use to personalize my outreach. So
for sure,
you're helping me out a lot as well.
Cool. So you reach out to these folks, you ask them a question, highlight something that they've done, you get the conversation started. Talk to me about how long you sustain that, how you sort of work the sales pitch in, maybe it's different with everybody and maybe that's the answer, but how do you go from just a general conversation, right, to actually talking about Wooly? Maybe you said kind of warming up that lead so you can pass them off to the sales team.
Right. And you hit it right on the nail there for sure. It is different with everyone. I don't use any, what's the word, like a specific formula or like not formula. Yeah. I don't use any script. And it is different with everyone, but typically I try to keep it in business. So it's not a hard transition. I'm not asking, how their dog is doing or something like that. I'm keeping it business focus. And then, after, so typically, I'm trying to ask what they're doing in media and marketing. And then I might bring up, hey, we have a very unique approach to that problem that you have, or I might just say, hey, do you mind if if I share a deck on Wooly, I think we have some stuff here at Wooly that would work perfect with what you're already doing at your company. And then from there, and I'm operating as Scott on his LinkedIn, obviously. I might, and if that conversation progresses, I might try to get them into a meeting or like a phone call, or I'll add in one of our sales guys directly into the conversation on LinkedIn. So then our sales guy can kind of take it from there,
Gotcha.
within the same message thread.
Yeah. I really like how you said can I share a deck? Like you ask to pitch them.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than just going like, conversation, boom, pitch, it's like, oh, hey, by the way, I do work for this company. You're transparent with it. Can I pitch you, right? Effectively, can I share a deck with you? Can I talk to you about the specific product or service that maybe meets the need? I like how you ask permission to do that, because then they can be like, thanks, no thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm out. You'd be like, okay,
Right.
cool. Like I understand. But then, I think it's a very non-salesy way to approach that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks. And I mean, another way too that we might ask that question is, hey, I love what you're doing at Mercedes. Just to keep with that same example, what do you think? Do you think Wooly might be able to help with what you're doing at Mercedes, or even just kind of ask for their thoughts? Hey, like, here's what we're doing at Wooly. Like, do you think we're going in the right direction for what you're doing at Mercedes? Like, what are your thoughts on what we're currently doing at Wooly?
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of, it's almost like, then you're just kind of asking for advice on your deck and what your company's doing. And it's less of a sales pitch and more of kind of just asking for advice.
Sure. And then what, maybe asking it as a percentage, right? How many
Mm-hmm.
people, that you reach out to, what percent of them actually kind of hit you back and say, yeah, here's what we did, or just completely ignore you? And then maybe once you start to make the turn to the pitch, how many people go along with you, if you will, during that process?
That's a good question. I don't actually have percentages. I should pull that up. I'd say people that respond is very, very high, like probably 80 to 90% on LinkedIn.
Wow. Okay.
And and granted, I spend a lot of time on each contact, and
Right. You're not just saying like, hi, how are you?
right, exactly. So I'm spending 10 to 15 minutes kind of trying to pull up news on a specific contact, and any relevant information I can find. And it didn't used to be that high, but I've gotten a lot better at figuring out what contacts are probably active on LinkedIn all the time,
Mm-hmm.
through the kind of the ways that I described. And then as far as actually getting a deck to them, probably, well, eventually I share the deck with all the contacts if the conversation actually progresses, and then maybe 50% are interested in learning about the deck. But
Nice. Yeah, and
yeah.
I think that's just helpful for people because, for me, it's not something I've spent a lot of time doing, is reaching out on
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn, because historically I've been reached out, like you mentioned earlier, to LinkedIn a lot, and it's always like, hey, thanks for connecting. Here's web development, right? Because I work in marketing, so it's like we charge $25 an hour, and here's 6 websites that we've built. Are you free for a call next week? And it's like,
Right.
I don't need your help. Like,
Yeah.
we're good. And I like what you do with the deep personalization. And then you said you actually then are able to add one of your sales folks into the conversation on LinkedIn. So that's how you just add them in, and then you sort of back out a little bit and let them take it from there.
Correct. Yeah. So when you're in the direct messages on LinkedIn, up at the top, there's 3 little dots. And if you click on that dot, you can click, I think it's add to the conversation, or add person to the conversation.
Okay.
And then you just click on that, and then based on where the region is or blah, 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 I can add in the relevant sales guy to that conversation. And then they can just kind of take it from there.
Sure. And then they try and get them on a call or an email and keep moving through, hopefully, the close.
That's great too, because, then the conversation is moving from that kind of personal conversation to, okay, now we're going to get down more to business and, try to make something happen between these 2 companies.
Yeah, for sure. And so then besides LinkedIn, do you do any email outreach, cold email outreach, or are you mainly just focused on LinkedIn right now?
Just focus on LinkedIn right now. I've done a lot of cold outreach in the past, and we found it was most successful to link that with LinkedIn. So typically we would do two emails, and these, just like LinkedIn, are very personal emails. And then after two emails, we would reach out on LinkedIn via either contact request, or if we're already connected with them, just send them a message
Hmm.
and say, hey, I've sent you a couple emails. Would love to get in contact. What's the best way to reach you or whatever. And that was actually a very successful way to reach out to people on LinkedIn. I think that had a 38% reply rate or something
Awesome.
through
Yeah, which is really good for a cold
that
email.
outreach. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, so that was very successful. But we've switched to just mainly reaching out on LinkedIn because we saw how successful reaching out on LinkedIn was paired with the emails. And so we decided, let's skip the emails and just reach out on LinkedIn. A lot of people's inboxes are kind of already flooded with a lot of emails, so it was easier just to reach out on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And then do you find, so LinkedIn is obviously growing massively in
Mm-hmm.
popularity, getting a lot more traffic, daily users. They're doing a good job really building the platform. But do you find that there's a lot of people when you're doing this research that still don't use LinkedIn or aren't super active on it? I guess what percentage, of the market that you look at is willing to have a conversation with you, right, on
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn?
For sure. I mean, yeah, you definitely find people that aren't active on LinkedIn, and that's why I try to reach out to, five or six, or sometimes even 10 different contacts from a company. And you don't have to have a personalized message for all of those, but if you create one personalized message for one person at the company, you can use that as a template for the others. I mean, I do enough research that I'm not finding that many people that are inactive, but you definitely get them where you reach out or you send a connection request and they're just not active. Or even now is sometimes a problem is sometimes people have reached their 30,000 connection limit, so
Huh. Yeah.
there's no chance for you to connect with them and talk with them, and then you might have to send an mail or something like that to get the conversation started.
Gotcha. Okay. And then when you're reaching out then to multiple people within the same company, right? So you make
Mhm.
a list of 5 or 10 people at a company.
Right.
If you start to have 2 or 3 of those that bite, I mean, is there any, I guess, caution or anything that you look out for if you have, if you have somebody that you're giving a demo to and then someone else is interested, like when do you start to merge those conversations, or has that ever been an issue for you?
Um, I mean, it's definitely happened. It's never been an issue because you just want to be very open about it once you get the conversation going. Like, hey, actually, I'm also talking with X, Y, and Z over in this department at your company.
Sure.
And then, kind of even maybe present the question to them of, who do you think would be better to like proceed with,
Oh, gotcha. And
with
they might
them
say,
or
"Oh,
you?
you're already talking to Bob over here, so just keep talking
Right.
to Bob and let me know how it
Exactly.
goes," kind of thing.
Yeah, and so that's actually worked very well. But I think it's really good to be open and honest about the fact, I'm talking to a couple different people at your company
For
from
sure.
the get go.
Very cool. Well, I'm really impressed with your strategy, Daniel. I think it's very, yeah, it sounds like a great sales strategy that I know I'm even thinking of some of our clients who are starting to do LinkedIn outreach. I mean, outreach isn't
Mhm.
something we offer as a service as a company, but who have talked to me about it. And, I've sort of given them a very rough template. But I'm going to send them this podcast when we're done and be like, hey, you should really listen to this. If you want to do LinkedIn outreach, this is how you should at least think about going about it.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. So then now, what are you up to now at Wooly? So I think you said you're working either full time or part time remotely. Is it
Mhm.
still this LinkedIn stuff, or are you doing some other things there?
So I do. Uh, so I'm still working part time at Wooly, and until the fall, I'll continue working part time remotely.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so right now at Wooly, a lot of time every day is spent with managing Scott's LinkedIn, and
Hmm.
then the other bit of my time is managing kind of the customer service emails for a large client that we're partnered with right now. So I kind of split my time half and half between those, and then also act as, the jack of all trades for the company, with
Sure.
whatever they need to do. But it's
Mhm.
been a great learning opportunity, and I love being in that tech startup sector, because you're getting to learn something new every day, and kind of develop a bunch of different skills.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then, so somebody who wants to do this type of strategy, how much time does it take? I mean, are you spending an hour a day doing this? Are you spending 5 hours a day researching? To really get these conversations going, do the appropriate amount of research. Because you said you're only part-time, but you're also doing a couple different jobs. How much time do you think it takes to really do it well, versus kind of, going halfway?
I mean, I'll typically spend, sometimes it only takes 5 minutes to get relevant, information and really craft a great message. But other times, I'll spend 20 minutes really kind of perusing the web, and finding and crafting a great message. So, I mean, typically in a day, I'll spend like 2.5 hours just on LinkedIn outreach. And then that's not all outreach, that's also managing messages requests, or not message requests, but messages that I already have with connections and things of that matter. But 2 to 2.5 hours of just like solid LinkedIn work, I'd say, per day.
That's awesome. Cool. And so you are really just launching into your career, which is fantastic. So talk to me next few years, 3 to 5 years. What are you wanting to do? What are you wanting to get into? You seem super excited about tech. You're very good at this LinkedIn outreach. Where are you wanting to take this?
I'm still really kind of trying to figure that out. And especially, I'm trying to figure out what I want to study at college. Cause I mean, I kind of, just through working with Wooly, and in many ways, I kind of already have that undergrad in business. So I don't really know that I want to go into business. So I'm still trying to figure out what I want to study as an undergrad. And for the near future, I'm planning to move back to Salt Lake City and continue working with Wooly. Hopefully, up my work to full time, and kind of take on new responsibilities, and continue to grow my network, and take advantage of all the connections and the network that Wooly and Scott have, and the growing tech scene in Salt Lake City.
Very cool. That's fantastic, Daniel. So anything you're looking for in particular, that if someone's out in the audience, professional connections, person, whatever, like anything that our audience can do to maybe help you, anything you're looking for?
Well, so, I mean, I think I'd really like to go into, to management, business management. I really enjoy managing people. So I love the tech scene, the startup scene. So, I mean, any kind of recommendations or advice that anyone can give me on kind of how to pursue that career, and what undergrad studies that they would recommend would be super helpful in that career would be greatly appreciated. And I'd love to connect on LinkedIn, and chat there, and kind of build my network.
Yeah. So what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
You can reach out to me on email, daniel@wooly.com, or I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. It's Daniel Fischer on LinkedIn. You can go on to Wooly's company page on LinkedIn, and you can find me there. Luckily, we don't have too many people working for us right now, because we're a startup. But you better hurry, because we're hiring every day, so it's growing.
That's awesome, and I'll throw a link to your LinkedIn in the show notes as well. So
awesome, yeah, I'd appreciate that.
Daniel,
love to connect.
Thank you for your time. This has been fantastic. I've learned a ton from you, and like I said, this is a really unique way to outreach that I think you got going on here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tyler.